So today I've got something a little bit different for you, a little break from our normal type of aircraft. I've got a 2011 Vans RV-12 behind me. Now the Vans aircraft holds the distinction of having the highest number of kit planes. Out of about 33,000 registered with the EAA, over 11,000 of them, so 1/3, are actually Vans kit planes. This video is going to cover a lot of different stats about the Vans RV-12 model. We're going to be looking at some of the unique features that it has. We're going to go around the exterior and take a look at the design, the wings, the flaperons, that stabilator, take a look at this beautiful paint job, and then we're going to go to the engine. Now this plane has an interesting engine, so definitely take a look at that section. When we take a look at the interior, you're going to see how it's laid out, the glass panel cockpit that's in there, kind of unique different sections. The leg room is huge. I've heard somebody say that there was a 6 foot 7 inch tall person that they had in there comfortably, so you got lots of space. You take a look at that bubble canopy, all different areas. Again, on the avionics, we've got an EFIS electronic flight display in there. Some nice avionics package with the GPS and things like that. We're also going to review some of the specifications of the plane. We're going to talk about the performance, and we're going to compare it to a couple of normal category certified aircraft, the Piper Tomahawk, as well as the Cessna 152 that a lot of people are kind of familiar with. And then, of course, our signature flight portion. So we're going to do our startup and our taxi. We're going to do takeoff, cruise flight, and then, of course, our landing portion as well. The Vans RV-12 is a special plane. It's actually a home-built experimental airplane, but it'll fall into the SLSA, or the Special Light Sport Aircraft category. Now, I said that the RV-12 has the distinction of being the most popular, but not only that, but the RV-12 has the distinction of being the first factory-built Vans aircraft model. So not only could you go out and buy a kit from Vans and build your own RV, but you can also go in and buy a fully built airplane from the factory. The time you'd spend on building one of these, probably about 700 to 800 hours. The RV-12 kits had started production back in about 2006, and they're still actually in production today. The RV-12 is an easy-to-learn, economical, and simple plane to fly. It's also low cost to operate and maintain. That cost is significantly less than the certified airplanes of the similar year range to these. Now, an interesting fact about this plane is that it's actually becoming quite popular for flight training. Flight instructors mention that students like to learn in the RV-12 because it's both modern and easy to learn. They get to solo in a shorter time, and it gives them a chance to learn the glass cockpit layout. Not only are you able to use this plane to train for your sports pilot license, but you can actually also use it to get both a private pilot license and even your commercial. So I've seen RV-12s flying cross country, but you know, it's more suitable for that 400 to 500 mile range. Now this plane is for sale, so if you're interested, the link to the details of the plane will be in the description below. Now let's take a little bit closer look at the exterior of this RV-12. First off, you can see it's got a beautiful tritone paint scheme, a maroon with the white base and the deep blue on it as well. And these wings, just take a look at these wings. We've got LED lights up here, and those are actually an upgrade that were done quite recently, as well as out here on the side. But one of the unique things, the first thing you'll notice when you walk up to it is this handhold. And the reason for this handhold is that because this wing is actually completely removable. That's one of those unique things I was going to talk to you about. You've got 2 people, 10 minutes, you can have these wings off of this plane, stick it on a trailer, take it home. You can avoid those expensive fees to hangar a plane if you're in one of those areas that don't have hangar space available. You've got a person standing out on the end there, they hold on to that. You reach in, there's a pin system behind the seat, you have to work the spring and the pin lever, take out that for the spar, slide it out a couple of feet, and it's got a huge spar in there. You'll slide it out a couple of feet, there's connectors that you unplug for the lights, and then there's also a connection for the flaperons, which I'll get to in a minute, and then you grab it on the other end, pull it off. You can stick it on a cradle or whatever you make for it, put the plane up on a trailer, and take off with it. The way that they made this trailerable was really unique. Not only did they have these flaperons, which are a combination of flap and aileron. You can see it covers almost the entire span of the wing. And there's a rod in there that you use. You can have a half setting and a full setting for the flaps. So when you have the flaps set down, it looks like this. And then when you're using your aileron, it actually adjusts from there. So that's a unique design of this. Huge wing space. It's 127 square feet of wing space on both sides of this, which gives you nice slow flight characteristics and low wing loading. So that flaperon is one part of the design that they used to make this trailerable. The removable wing, it's got a single connection for both of those, but the other part is this stabilator. So you'll find stabilators on Cessna Cardinals, as well as Piper Cherokee Arrows, and it's basically the entire back moves instead of just the hinged elevator that you find on a lot of the planes. This was designed like this so that they could keep the overall width of less than 8 feet. That way, when you take the wings off, this is street legal by being less than 8 feet wide. And they gave this so that you have that elevator control authority by having the full elevator. The trim is actually electric trim, so you've got that inside. And then the rudder. So you've got your big tail fin here, but this rudder is really large. It gives you lots of control. And you use this rudder very effectively for your ground movement, and you can see it's actually free and separate from the nose wheel, because I'm going to show you that free castering nose wheel, but it's not only for your ground taxiing, but also gives you really good control in flight. So I mentioned about that free castering nose wheel, and that's what this design is. So you've got the bolts here, you can use that to turn and tow it and tug it anywhere you want, but basically this is where you rotate. And so this nose wheel is not connected to anything, unlike a lot of the planes where you've got rudder control off of that. It's completely separate and independent, allowing you to actually turn almost 180 degrees with your inboard wheel staying almost stationary using differential braking and being able to just spin this completely around. And you can see that this doesn't have the wheel pant on it, and the reason for that is that this nose fork is actually an updated, beefier design due to a service bulletin or an AD that was put out within the last couple of years. So they replaced that, and it looks like there needs to be an adapter bracket that would be put in, but we do have the nose wheel pant painted to match on here, and you can see that we do have the wheel pants installed on the main wheels. It looks really nice with those on there. We take a look just kind of overall here. We've got our air intake for our oil cooler. Down here is a very large opening, and then we've got 2 air intakes up here to cool the engine. This one is open and allows the air to go through the entire engine compartment, and this one, if you take a look at the engine section, it'll show you that this actually goes and has a tube that goes directly onto the cylinders, making it a very efficient way of cooling those cylinders on the engine. I want to show you just how easy this is to maneuver. So anybody can move this plane. It's really lightweight, only 1,320 pounds, and that free castering nose wheel means you can make a 360-degree turn without that inboard wheel moving at all. You got to give a dandelion effect try out here for the camera. We always appreciate if you take the time to like our video, subscribe to our channel so you can see more videos like this in the future, and of course, any questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the section below and we'll do our best to answer them. We're going to show you just how easy it is to get into this plane. Unlike a lot of the low wings where you have to climb in from the back, this has steps up front. So you've got a little step stand there where you step up on it. We've got the latch pin here to unlock it, and then there's a little lever on the side. Help me lift it up. Huge bubble canopy that pops open. It's got a swing there, and it's actually got gas shocks up on the front here that make it easy to pop open, and then it props itself open that way. And you just, like she did, step up and in. Now let's say you've got a passenger who's just a little bit less mobile than you are. It's a nice height for this wing. I'll let you get over here to this side. It's actually a really nice height for the wing, so if you've got somebody that's not quite as mobile, not quite as agile, getting up like she did, you can just push yourself up and over like this. And this is actually in the training manual of a way to get in, so it's not something I came up with. You slide yourself up and over and down and in. Just as simple as that. So it's really easy access to get in and out. We'll grab the canopy, we can pull it down over ourselves, and help me here. Put our hand here to make sure that we don't drop it. There's a latch. Lock it into place. We're ready to go. And while I've got it here, I'm going to show you. Oh, the sun's bright. You got really bright sunlight like that out there. This is actually an upgrade option. Slide this down, gives you a nice cover on those hot, super sunny days, gives you a little bit of shade so it's a little easier. But you can see with this canopy being like it is, it's completely wide open. You can see out the backside, you can see all the way up, and then being just in front of the wing here, you actually see all the way down to the ground while you're flying as well. So it's got a full view, super open. It's probably one of the most open cockpit designs that you can find in a plane like this. So laid out here on the wing, we've got a lot of the documentation that comes with the plane. It's extremely valuable information. We've got 2 copies of the POH and all of its information there. We've got a maintenance manual for the RV-12 itself with exploded diagrams to use, as well as the engine manual for the Rotax engine, and again, exploded diagrams that tells you what type of tools you're going to need. You've got your service bulletins, you've got your other documentation and paperwork, your logbooks, obviously. Some paperwork that goes with the engine information over here, and then finally a flight training supplement that's extremely invaluable that has detailed pictures and diagrams of locations of where everything is, so that when you're doing even a pre-flight, it shows you what you're looking for on the pre-flight. This would have been so helpful on the plane I did a couple weeks ago. Sometimes you don't know when you get into a new plane where your fuel sumps and everything are. So this has got all of that information, as well as how to fly the plane, including some diagrams on those flaperon controls and such like that. So very valuable information for the new owner. This RV-12 has a Rotax 912 ULS 4-cylinder horizontally opposed, both air and liquid cooled engine. Now it's got dual carburetors and multiple other features in here. So if we take a look up close, you can see that we've got the carburetors for each side of the cylinders, the air intake, and then the carburetors here. Our ignition boxes are here, A and B. When you follow everything around, the coolant reservoir is here. We've got kind of a radiator style cap, and then the coolant goes down here to the cylinder heads. So the cylinder heads themselves are cooled by liquid. The rest of the cylinders and the top of the engine has this air box on it that's fed by ram air from the front of the cowling. And this is a more efficient option than a lot of the engines that have baffling around them to direct the air in from the front intakes. This actually has a hose that directs it straight down and onto the top of the cylinders, helps cool the engine more efficiently. The max power of this engine is 100 horsepower, and that's achieved at 5,800 RPM. There's a 5-minute limit to that, but you can get 95 horsepower continuously on this engine, and you can run both 100 LL as well as 91 grade premium unleaded fuel. The Rotax 912 series is a market-dominating engine. Now, I don't have the latest data, but as of 2014, they had sold over 50,000 units. The 912 ULS is only 2 pounds heavier than a straight 912, and that's at 80 horsepower. So just for 2 pounds, you're gaining 20 horsepower. And there's also a newer electronic fuel-injected version that's called the Rotax 912i, which is a recent development that's more fuel efficient. This particular engine in this plane has only less than 260 hours on it. And the TBOs on these are based on the serial numbers. So this one actually comes with a 2,000 hour, the highest TBO. So at 260 hours, this has got tons of life left on this engine. We take a look at some of the other features that are in here. You can see that it is newer lines. It's got different probes for the engine monitor that's displayed on the EFIS. And then up here we have our gearbox. So that 5,800 RPM, that sounds a little bit high, and that is because this is a geared engine. So the engine is going to rotate, it's going to have 5,800 RPM. This is a 2.43 to 1 ratio, so it drops it down so that the propeller is only going to run at about 2,400 RPM when you're at the max RPM rating on here. So I mentioned about the liquid-cooled engine and about the geared engine. These aren't new concepts or original concepts by any means. There are other engines out there. For example, the Ram 5 is an engine that is liquid-cooled, so that's a feature that you can find in other engines. And then as far as a geared engine, the Continental GTSIO 520 is a geared engine, and that's actually used in the popular Cessna 421 series. So it has a brand new battery installed in it. And then up here we've got our oil tank. So unlike a lot of the engines that are out there that have the oil tank underneath and then the pump that comes up, this actually has a separate tank here. And so there's a unique way you have to do an oil check. You can pull this open, and of course you can pull up the dipstick, but it's going to show low, because in order to do a proper and accurate oil check on this, you open this to allow the air through, then you take the prop and you rotate it in the direction of travel for anywhere from 10 to 20 times, depending on how cold it is out. You're going to hear a very distinctive gurgling sound come out of here that you know that that's when all of the oil has been pumped up in here. Then you can pull out the dipstick and check it and make sure you're getting an accurate readout on your oil level. I'm going to take a look in the interior of the RV12 now. So you can see that it's actually been updated by adding in all of the extra fabric and everything like that. These are aftermarket upgrades to have the side panels and the carpet and things. The base version doesn't come with all of those coverings, obviously. So take a look. Everything is clean condition. The seats has a nice two-tone gray and red. It's a 5-point harness system. So you've got your 2 shoulder straps, you've got your regular belt strap, and then you've got the strap that goes up through the center. So all of those are there. When you look here, we can see that we've got our flapper-on controls, and it's got a half mark. Oh, that's the full mark. That's half. So that's where you pull up on those to do the flapper-ons. These seats have 2 adjustments to them. You can move the seat back, forward and backward just a little bit, and then there's also a little lever back here that you can put in order to tilt it back a little bit or keep it up a little. For those that are a little bit shorter, they make blocks that extend the rudder controls and bring them closer to you so that you can reach them, because obviously you can only go so far forward and still have the full control of the stick motion. So then you put extensions on the rudder pedals instead in this one. Just kind of going through some of the front here and the avionics panel. This is our main fuse bar, so you can see it's got all of the fuses nice and clearly labeled, and there's a full backup set of fuses in the glove box over here, and they're actually fully labeled and organized to show every single one if you needed to do a replacement on there. Got some cleaning materials in there for doing your check on your oil and everything. Our key with our starter switch, your master, your 2 ignition switches, your avionics switch, you've got a nav and strobe light, your landing light steady and as well as a pulse light, your autopilot on and off, and then your electric trim for your elevator are here. It's only one control of the throttle. You've got your choke for when you start it, and that's only on a cold start, and then everything else is used by the throttle. And then your cabin heat, you can turn that on and off. Along with the cabin heat, we have cabin air, which are these vents down here. You just pop these open and it opens up on the side. That gives a lot of air through there. It blows through really nice. Now here we went back to this spar pin. This is an override switch. So there are some out there, especially the earlier model of RVs, the RV12s, that there was contact issues in the wing. So what they did is they actually had this installed as part of one of those things, because when you put the wings on, it has a safety mechanism where you put the wings in, there's connections in there, and it's got a contact. If that's not connected where it's supposed to connect, it's not going to let you start the engine. So there's actually an override for that, for the spar pin, that you can override it if you know it's just the contact that's an issue. The previous owner has stated that this one, there's an upgrade that can be done on it that was taken care of through a mechanic. So he's never had an issue, he's never had to use that spar pin override switch. So now that we have the avionics turned on, we'll take a look here. This is the Flight Deck D180. It is the full EFIS display. We have, starting on the side here, our airspeed indicator. We've got our heading indicator across this top strip. This is our altitude. So if you've got here, this is actually an automatic altimeter setting. This one will change throughout the day automatically to detect that, so you don't have to put it in. So 690 is our altitude right now. Our turn and bank coordinator here with our ball indicator. Over here is actually all of our engine gauges. We've got our manifold pressure. Right now this is saying 0 gallons per hour, but this is actually up here. This one is our RPM gauge. We've got our fuel pressure as well as our oil pressure as well as oil temperature. And then this is how many gallons in here. And we do have a regular mechanical gauge in the back, but this is our electric gauge. You've got 2 sets of probes for EGT and CHT, the left 2 and the right 2 cylinders. So better than a lot of the ones that come with just a single probe. You can see those there. You've got a couple of different enunciators down here for showing obviously low oil pressure, because there's an EGT because we don't have it turned on. So you've got those. When you put the autopilot on, you can control it through here with all the different things you can click in. You've got the options, your bug, and everything like that. But on top of that, they've also installed the AP74, and this is an external autopilot control because it can be controlled through the flight deck, but by having this here, you can easily connect everything, use your heading, your track, your nav, everything like that, your altitude hold. All of those can be adjusted through this without having to change screens on the big screen. If we go over to the center, our center stack, we have a Garmin 496. This is perfect size. You can easily upgrade this to a 660 or even a 760 Garmin if you'd like to, or there's plenty of panel real estate left to go ahead and add in another one if you'd like to keep this original one. And you can put that over here just about anywhere. But this has a lot of information in it. If you keep it up to date on the database, you can actually get a lot of information about the nearest airports. You've got your runway length as well as frequencies, and you've got the ATC up here, your VORs, the weather. There's a bunch of information that you can pull off of this unit if you wanted to just keep what's actually in there. We've got our Garmin SL40 audio panel here, or a radio. So we've got 2 comm frequencies, really easy to use, switch in between them, update them there. And then we have a Garmin GTX 325 transponder, very simple to update squawk codes and switch back to VFR if you'd like to. Over here to kind of round it out, you've got your ELT switch obviously, and then this is your radio, so your squelch and your volume for your radios. You can isolate it to the left only or put it in the middle for both. It also has a Stratus plug-in here, so you can put 2 USB plug-ins, and there's another one of these back behind the seat, so you actually have 4 total plug-ins for USB to put in any kind of avionics or electronics that you want to plug in while you're flying. Now let's look at the specifications for the 2011 RV12. There are some slight variations over the years, but they're mostly very similar. The plane can carry 580 pounds. With 20 gallons of fuel, that still gives you 460 pounds for passengers and bags. The fuel burn is very low at only 3 to 5 gallons per hour. Now looking at the performance numbers, remember these are full gross weight, so when an airplane is at less than gross weight, many of these numbers will be even better. So a very short takeoff distance of only 700 feet with only 525 feet for the landing roll. And the plane can fly up to 13,800 feet and fly at 113 knots. Next, let's go on to compare the RV-12 to 2 similar sized certified airplanes. So now this isn't an apples to apples comparison, but more just to give you an idea. The Cessna 152 and Piper Tomahawk are very good airplanes. They both fall into the normal category for certified planes. In other words, they've been designed to meet certification requirements. The RV-12 is not a certified airplane, but falls into the light sport category or experimentable depending on the build. So we've marked in light green which airplane has better performance for the given category. As you can see, the RV-12 has a higher useful load, less fuel burn, a shorter takeoff distance, longer range, higher cruise speed, and lower stall speeds compared to either the Cessna 152 or the Piper Tomahawk. And also, it's a much later model, and it even comes with a glass cockpit. Okay, so our startup procedure, we want to adjust the friction on the throttle here. First thing we're going to do is make sure our fuel valve is on, which is down here, and that is on, so that's set. So then we want to go over, we want to put our master, as well as both ignitions on. We're going to turn the avionics on so we get our engine readouts. It is a cold start. So we're going to turn the choke on, which is pulling it out about that 1 inch and turning it to lock. Alright, then we make sure we hold the brakes. Our prop is clear, so we're going to switch our key to start. Alright, so as soon as we got it started, we want to adjust the throttle, make sure that we keep that RPM in the green. It's got a very narrow range that's safer to be in when you first start it up until everything gets warmed up. And then the next thing we also want to check right away too is making sure that the oil pressure came up and that that's in the green arc as well. So you can see that the RPMs are starting to decrease, so we want to go ahead and get that choke out now. When we're doing that, we want to make sure that we've also got our hand on the throttle and adjusting that in as we release the choke, making sure that we keep the RPMs within the green arc while we're doing that, and just keeping the engine running smoothly during that transition. So the run-up on these planes are done at a higher RPM than most since it's a high RPM engine. What you do is you want to turn the plane into the wind to keep the oil temps in the green, and that needs to be above 120 before you start the run-up. So you increase the throttle to 4,000 RPM, switch each ignition switch first off and then back on. It's just like a mag check. We're looking for the drop and differential between the two. So your max drop is 300 and your differential should be less than 115 RPM between the two. And then you go ahead and check the rest of the gauges and you're good to go. We don't have the autopilot turned on just right now. Personally not extremely familiar with the Dyna systems, so just a little bit safer with a new plane like that not to get set up, and we'll just let that be. So we've got our ground speed over here, obviously standing still. This is our elevation. That's about right. It's 689, I believe, for the airport here. That's not on the ends of the runways. Manifold pressure tachometer here. Oil pressure looks good. Our engine temps are good. Fuel is nice and full. We've got EGTs and CHTs are both looking good for the left and right, so they've got 2 probes on each of them, one for the left set of cylinders, one for the right set of cylinders, so you're looking at 2 of them instead of 4 of them. A little bit easier, but better still than just only one. So when we get ready for takeoff here, we're going to get up on the runway, push in the full throttle, make sure we're maintaining our controls. We want to pull the throttle back just a little bit, somewhere about, this is neutral, so about halfway between neutral and back, just to keep the pressure off that nose wheel. Let that nose wheel come up slowly before we're going to rotate off at about 55 to 60, and then we'll take off and we're going to climb at about 75 to 85. So for takeoff, we want to put the flaperons up halfway, that first notch where it pops out. That's those.
Automated weather observation 15.
Stark County traffic, RV Alpha Bravo, ready for departure runway 36, staying in the pattern. Stark County.
0, gust, 14, visibility.
We'll have a little bit of a crosswind from the left.
4,000, scattered temperature.
So we'll monitor that.
Celsius.
Got a nice long runway here, so we'll just take our time accelerating so we can maintain our rudder controls and our directional controls. Once the flaperons go down, we got to adjust our nose. So the initial climb out is at full power. You want to pitch for 75 knots, which is your best rate of climb. Your full power is limited to 5 minutes on this engine, and we usually pull the power back after about 1000 AGL anyway. So once you have this sharp climb, you can see that there's still great visibility with that bubble canopy. You can easily see where you're going, even on that steep of a climb out. So we've pulled the power back in the video to about 4850 RPM for the cruise flight portion, but you can even run this engine around 5400 RPM continuously if you wanted to. So handling the RV-12 and even taking the turns with the stick is fairly easy, even if you're used to the yoke controls. Once you get the feel for it, it becomes like second nature. When we transitioned into a stick-controlled plane, we didn't even train with anyone, but if you needed to, you can always fly with another pilot that's familiar with these type of controls for a short period of time until you get the hang of it. When you find yourself in some turbulence, the plane's going to jump around a little bit, which is common to any small plane. This RV-12 has great visibility. It's super fun to fly on a nice scenic flight. You can see just about everything everywhere from in front of you down to underneath as well. When we went in and activated the autopilot, it took a nice coordinated turn back to the GPS track heading back to the airport. The autopilot even has an altitude hold and heading functions. So even with turbulence, the autopilot seems to handle the plane pretty well.
Stark County Airport. Automated weather observation. 1610 Zulu. Weather. Wind 360 at Niner. Gusts 14. Visibility.
Got about a 5 knot gust factor, so we're going to land a little bit fast, about 4 or 5 knots fast. So once you get ready to enter the pattern, you want to pull the power back, get it down to the pattern altitude, and also slow the plane down. When you're on downwind, you'll put it in about half flaps, or the flaperons, and then you'll only need minimal power when you're on the base and final legs. Once you're established on the final approach, then you can go ahead and add the full flaps, or flaperons, which is the second setting. Nice glide slope there, 1 PAPI light. A little bit of wind from the left, so the crab. That's going to slow us down. Pull the throttle back and let it idle. We're going to keep a nose up attitude till our mains touch. Watch our rudder control. Basically, you can stop really short distance. Easily within a few hundred feet of touchdown, no matter where you're at. Here's a view of that nice smooth landing from our tail-mounted camera. So you can see that we landed on the left wheel, which is in the direction of the crosswind, and then settled it down on the runway. This isn't really side-loading, but a technique for crosswind landings that's especially useful for heavy gusting crosswinds. Here's a view of landing from the cockpit. As you can see, it has really nice visibility all around, and this great visibility is also a safety factor because you can easily see other traffic in the pattern and on the ground. What a beautiful, smooth landing. This is one of the reasons the RV-12 is becoming a popular training aircraft. So the airspeed, taxiing on the ground speed, usually you're thinking a lot of planes, 15, maybe 20. You don't have a lot of rudder control and authority when you're down that low, especially on a right-hand turn. So you might have to add a little bit more power, use a little bit more braking in order to get that right turn authority Otherwise, like I said, usually you can be really, really slow and you can make almost a turn on a dime with the left turn. It's just managing the brakes and managing the controls properly. I want to thank you for taking the time to watch our video today. We always appreciate if you take the time to like our video, subscribe to our channel so you can see more videos like this in the future, and of course, any questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the section below and we'll do our best to answer them.